Based on the popular Zap effect, UltraZap introduces a whole range of brand new and useful features that you can use to enhance visual effects and motion graphics projects. In this tutorial, we're going to create this look by combining UltraZap with some of my other favorite Sapphire effects. So let's jump in. Okay, so here I'm working in After Effects and I have a text layer. I'm going to apply UltraZap by coming up to the Effects and Presets panel and typing in Ultra, and then double-clicking S UltraZap. That applies UltraZap to the text layer. And if you've used Sapphire Zap, you'll recognize this look. This is very similar to the Sapphire Zap effect. You can see we have a spline here, and we have points on the spline which you can move around to change the shape of that bolt. And many of the settings in UltraZap are the same as Zap. So if you've used Zap before, you'll feel very comfortable. But UltraZap comes with a lot more features, which we'll take a look at. And definitely take a moment to check out the presets that ship with UltraZap. Many of these have been designed to work specifically with text and logos, but we're going to go ahead and use the default settings for now. First thing to do is come over to Mode, and here where it says UltraZap, just click and choose UltraZap AE Path, because we want the path to follow the text outlines, and this is an After Effects only feature. Another host can use native Zap splines. So I'm going to choose UltraZap AE Path, and look over here, you'll see the Zap will hug my text. And that's because Follow Selection is set to text by default. If you have masks on your layer, you can choose to follow the selected path, or you can choose to follow all paths. In this case, I'm using the text. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is just come down to Composite, and where it says Combine, click and choose Zap Only, because I want to hide the text. Okay. Now, unlike Zap, UltraZap is organized into categories, which makes it a lot easier to work with. So let's start at the top with bolt structure. Now, if I wanted to, I can add more than one bolt. But for this look, I only want one. I'm going to set bolt width to 6. Make that a little thinner. And bolt length down to 0.5. Because we're going to make this loop in a moment. I don't want any wrinkle amplitude. Set that to 0. But for curve amplitude, I'm just going to bring that down to 0.1. Okay, now let's give this some taper. This is a brand new feature in UltraZap. I'm going to set taper N to 1. And you can see how we get that lovely taper from the start to the end. It comes nice and fine at the end. I'm going to set feather bolt to 0.5. This is also a new feature, as are start color and end color. So now I can colorize my bolt from start to end. So for start, I just want to choose a very pale orange. Maybe something like that. And for end, something a little deeper and richer. That'll be fine. Okay, now you can see we've got some glow on here. I'm going to twirl that up for a moment, come down to Ultra Glow, which we'll talk about in a moment, and just set glow brightness to 0. Just so we can see the bolt without any glow messing up our colors. Okay, so let's twirl up Ultra Glow and twirl down Bolt Animation. Now, along with Zap's Wiggle, UltraZap also includes brand new loop animation settings and also bolt noise animation. And if we set loop speed to 1, let's come to 1 second and set my work area by pressing the N key. This is going to give us a 1 revolution seamless loop. But I want that to move a little slower. So I'm going to set this to 2 seconds and change my loop speed. I also want it to move in the opposite direction, so I'm going to change it to -0.5. And now we'll get a full revolution over 2 seconds, moving at half the speed. While I let that RAM preview, you can see also we have Zap direction settings. And there's even a random reverse setting, so you should try some of these out and check out the results of those. Okay, so now we have our Zap moving at half the speed. Going to stop that for a moment. Now we don't want any bolt noise in this, but I'm just going to zoom in and just bring up the bolt noise You can see what that does. You can see that breaks up the bolt, and there's also a bolt noise speed. So that will give you some animated noise within your bolt if you want a more sort of fractured, grungy bolt look. But I don't want any for that, so I'm going to bring that right down to 0. Okay, I'm going to twirl up bolt animation, come down to branchiness. For this look, I don't want to have any branches, but I'm just going to increase the branchiness for a moment and just point out another new feature in UltraZap, which is branches only. If I click on branches only, we're going to hide the bolt. So you can use that for various creative looks. Going to uncheck that and bring branchiness down to 0. Notice that branches can also have their own color and their own width. So a lot more settings for branches in UltraZap than there are in Zap. Okay, so we're going to skip secondary for a moment and come down to UltraGlow. Sapphire 2021's new UltraGlow effect has been included inside UltraZap, and this gives us a range of options for adding really beautiful glows to our Zap. Let's go ahead and set brightness to 3.5 and change the color. I'm going to choose just a fairly light orange here. Bring it a little bit richer, like that. You can see we are getting a little bit of sort of green in there. I want to make sure that my glow width, red, green, and blue are all set to 1. Okay, that's looking good. Let's also set the glow width to 25. This is going to give us a tighter glow. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want to add some afterglow. And this is one of the great features of Sapphire's UltraGlow. If I bring afterglow width quite high, maybe 100, you see that really gives us that lovely soft glow around the outside of our primary glow. And I'm going to change the afterglow color, just sample this one, and just make this a little richer. A little darker, a little redder, and check that out. Doesn't that look beautiful? So it's so nice to have UltraGlow included with UltraZap. Okay, so here's where we are so far. You can see very quickly we've been able to set up this really lovely looping bolt animation with this hot bolt and this beautiful soft glow with this afterglow fall off. So let's come down now and look at secondary bolts. I'm going to twirl up UltraGlow and twirl open bolt structure. Now, a secondary bolt isn't the same as adding multiple primary bolts. We saw up here under bolt structure, I can add multiple bolts, and multiple bolts here inherit all of the parameters under bolt structure, bolt animation, and bolt branchiness. Secondary bolts have their own structure, animation, and branchiness. And this is going to allow us to add a second bolt to this text with its own individual custom look and behavior, which will add a lot of detail and interest. So let's add one secondary bolt. And make some adjustments. I'm going to set secondary bolt width to 3. Decrease the bolt length. I'm going to choose 0.65 for that. I'm going to leave the wrinkle amplitude where it is because I want this to look more like lightning. And I'm going to set curve amp right down, 0.2. Also need to change the color. So for the start, once again, I'm going to choose a pale orange. Bring that to about there. And for the end, I want to make this quite red. Something like that. So you can see our secondary bolt is around the same color at the start, and it's slightly longer, and then it falls off to this rich red. Now, although secondary bolts have their own animation, which means we could have a completely separate setup for the loop, I want to use the same loop as I'm using for the primary bolt. So I'm just going to type in loop and just grab the loop speed for the secondary loop and link that up to loop speed for bolt animation. So now they're going to move in exactly the same way, but our secondary bolt is slightly longer. Now I don't want any branchiness for the secondary bolt. I'm going to make that 0. And let's take a look at that. So you can see how the first bolt is sort of creating the shape of the letter, and the secondary bolt is following along with that. It's a little bit longer and it has a lot more wrinkle. So having the secondary bolt allows us to add way more detail. Okay, so that's the basic UltraZap setup. Next, I want to duplicate this effect and create this sort of leading hotspot. Now, I could have created a hotspot just with one UltraZap by having my primary bolt and then using my secondary bolt and making it much thicker to create a hotspot. But I'm a bit of a hog and I want to have 3 bolts. So I want to have my primary and my secondary, and I want to add a 3rd bolt at the very start so we have this nice bright hotspot. And to do that, I need to duplicate the effect. So I'm going to just select the layer and press Ctrl or Command D. And I'm going to just hide the original one for now so we can focus on this one for a moment. Now for this one, I don't need a secondary bolt. So I'm just going to come into secondary bolt structure and just make that 0. Once again, just close that up and come under bolt structure. And I'm going to make bolt width 10. I want to bring the bolt length right down. But I do want a little bit of wrinkle amplitude. This gives us a little bit of a squiggle on that tail. Start color, I'm going to make that almost white. And for end color, I'm going to bring that down to red. Something like that. Let's also adjust the glow. I'm going to bring glow brightness up slightly and adjust the glow width. Bring that right down to 4. See, we get that really bright hotspot. One thing we can also do is add some atmosphere by coming down to glow atmosphere and checking the checkbox. And just going to increase the amplitude slightly. Just take a look around this area here as I drag that up. We get that nice sort of smoky effect around the hotspot. Something like that. Let's combine that with the other one and we'll see how that looks. I'm going to turn that on. We need to set this UltraZap layer to add, like that. And that's looking really good. You can see what a difference it makes with that hotspot, looking like it's emitting that zappy streak. So now let's work on the text treatment, and I've actually created a preset for us to save some time. So if I select our original UltraZap, come down to Composite, and I'm going to choose Screen. Now we can see the original text. I'll turn off the top one just for now. And I'm going to come up to Animation and choose Apply Animation Preset. You'll find this preset in the Templates folder. This one here, Roughen, Grad, Grunge, Bevel, Shadow. I know it's a long name, but I wanted to make it as descriptive as possible. And click Open. Okay, so it looks a little strange. That's because the order is wrong. I need to bring UltraZap right down to the bottom of the effect stack, just to have that applied last. Let's just turn that off. Take a quick look at what's happening here. Actually, I'll turn off the roughen edges as well. And with the layer selected, I'm just going to press U twice and just twirl up the effects. You can see we have actually got some layer styles applied. I've used inner shadow and bevel and emboss. And for the inner shadow, I've just added a simple wiggle expression to the opacity of the shadow and to the angle of the shadow. Let's do a quick preview. Because we've got this lightning or this zap moving really fast around the text, I wanted the shadow to feel like it's responding to the movement of the light. And I couldn't obviously animate the shadow to the exact position. So if the light was up here, then the shadow would be, down here. And I couldn't do that because it was just too difficult to control. So rather than do that, I've just decided to wiggle opacity and angle just to make it look like the shadow is moving as the light's moving, and I think it makes it look a little more realistic. Let's turn on the next effect. This is just the After Effects Roughen Edges effect, just to sort of roughen up those edges. Sapphire Gradient. And Sapphire Gradient, just using an orange to red. You can see I've just moved the effect control points here, start XY and end XY. And keep in mind that layer styles are applied last. So all of the effects are applied first, and then layer styles are applied last. S-Grunge. S-Grunge is giving us a little bit of a grungy texture on the inside of the text. And for that, I've just used garage floor, glass cracks, and pavement cracks as my stamps. And then on top of that, we have Ultra Zap. And you can also see, actually, just turn that off for a sec. You can also see there's my bevel, or my bevel layer style. Okay, looking good. See how that layer style inner shadow is just sort of flickering on and off? And like I said, it's not moving, in the perfect way based on where the light is positioned, but it's moving enough to make it feel like the shadow is reacting to the light source. So definitely a hack, but I think it looks pretty effective. Notice also that atmosphere around that leading hotspot, which is really nice. Obviously, I could have the atmosphere setting around all of the glow, but it was a little too much. So having it just isolated to the hotspot just adds some atmosphere without, overdoing it. Next, we're going to add a few particles, and I'm actually going to do that using bokeh lights. We're going to apply that to the Ultra Zap layer. Come over to Effects and Presets and choose Bokeh, Sapphire Bokeh Lights. Once again, I've made a preset for this one, and if I click on Load Preset, now I've already loaded the preset, but you can come up to the File menu and choose Import Preset. Just navigate to the Templates folder, and it's this one here, S Bokeh Lights, Bokeh Embers. Now keep in mind that this is a Sapphire 2021 preset. If you're using a previous version, it's not going to work for you. So this one's called Bokeh Embers. I'm going to click Load. And this adds a whole lot of bokeh lights around the text. Now the reason it's swarming around the text is because I have used source color set to 1. If I make that 0, you can see how it fills the entire area. This is one of my favorite little tricks in bokeh lights. Just bring that source color up to 1, and it will only be visible around the source color of the layer that it's applied to. And we'll preview that in a moment, but first of all, let's just make a background. I'm going to make a new solid layer just by pressing Command or Control Y. I'm going to make that black, and I'll name this Grunge. Bring that down to the bottom, and come over to my Effects and Presets panel, type in Grunge, S-Grunge. Now the default doesn't look too bad, but I've also made a preset for this, so I'm going to click Load Preset. If you haven't already loaded it, just come up to the File menu and choose Import Presets. And it's this one here, S-Grunge Dark Rock Wall. Once again, this will only work in Sapphire 2021. And here it is here, Dark Rock Wall. I've already loaded it up. I wanted something a little more subtle, but I wanted to make it look as if this text is sort of carved onto a wall, but it needed to be fairly dark. Probably just come down to Stamp 1 color and just make that a little brighter. You should go ahead and play with S-Grunge and try different stamps and customize that for yourself. Okay, so the final step is to add some Ultra Glow over the entire look. So for this, I'm going to use the new 2021 Ultra Glow effect, and I want this to affect all of the layers. So I'm going to use an adjustment layer by pressing Control Alt or Command Option Y. Shift Control or Shift Command Y on the Mac to rename this. I'm going to name this Ultra Glow. Come over to my Effects and Presets panel, type in Ultra, and double-click Sapphire Ultra Glow. And this adds that beautiful soft Ultra Glow, but it's a little too much for this. I'm going to come down and just twirl up Primary Glow and just come down to Highlights and check that on. And it looks a little strange. I've got to come onto my Ultra Glow layer and choose Screen, just to composite that with the other layers. And what I'm after here is to create a kind of boiling effect. So I'm going to increase the highlight frequency and the octaves. I'm going to zero out Highlights Grad X, decrease my layers, decrease my threshold, and bring up the brightness. It's also come up to my Primary Glow, and I don't want white for this. I want this to be orange. Something like that. And my glow width is way too high. Okay, now that's looking better. Just need to adjust the glow fall off. This is only going to be subtle, but it will move those glow highlights through this layer, and it'll make it look as if this text has got sort of a boiling effect on it. If you want to learn more about these highlight settings and Ultra Glow in general, make sure you check out the 2021 New Features Ultra Glow tutorial. So you can see how we've got this sort of fractal kind of pattern moving through the text, and that's the Ultra Glow highlights. A really nice way using an adjustment layer just to add a little bit of extra detail to this. And you can notice also those bokeh lights just swarming around the text. Okay, so one more thing to do to this is to add a heat haze effect. And to do that, we can use Sapphire Effect. I'm going to create one more adjustment layer and name this Heat Haze. Come over to Effects and Presets, type in S_effect. Double click and load a preset. And we're going to search for a heat haze preset that I created for an earlier version of Sapphire. Just typing in heat and haze, and it's this one here, Heat Haze S Effect. A realistic heat haze, Oasis Heat Ripple Mirage look. Just click load for that, and it's going to add a lot of glow. Now we already have a lot of glow for this, so I'm going to actually bring the threshold right up. Because I'm not so interested in the glow, I'm more interested in the ripple and the distortion. Before we preview that, let's just click on Edit Effect. And if you haven't used Sapphire Builder, I recommend you take a look at it because it's a really great way to build your own custom effects in Sapphire. You can see this effect was created by using the glow effect and S-distort. With a gradient mask, just ported into the matte port for distort, and with the ripple effect controlling the lens of the distortion. And as with all Sapphire Builder effects, I've just checked the parameters that I wanted to see inside the host. And here's the final look. Notice how we had this lovely ripple effect over everything, and that really pulls everything together. And as you can see, Ultra Zap along with Ultra Glow really fit perfectly in the Sapphire Effect universe, and combined with other Sapphire effects like bokeh lights and grunge, you can create some really stunning looks. So thanks for watching, and be sure to visit borisfx.com to take a free trial of Sapphire or Continuum, and to see more videos about all of the Boris FX products.